The night I finally pressed play on the hidden camera footage, I expected to feel fear, maybe confusion, maybe even guilt for secretly recording my own home. But what I saw didn't just scare me. It rewrote everything I thought I knew about my marriage, my sanity, and the woman who claimed she only wanted what was best for her son. There she was, my mother-in-law, moving through my kitchen in the dark like she belonged there, touching my things, breaking what she later blamed on me, and whispering something so unsettling that even now, weeks later, I still hear it when I try to sleep. That moment wasn't just the beginning of the truth. It was the moment I realized someone had been slowly, quietly dismantling my life, and everyone, including my husband, believed I was the one falling apart. And the worst part? That night wasn't the first time she had been here. It was just the first time I caught her. My name is Emily Carter, and until a year ago, I thought I had a pretty normal life. Not perfect, not the kind of life people brag about online, but steady, predictable. I had a job I liked, a small but comfortable home in Portland, and a marriage that, at least in the early days, felt like something solid. When Daniel and I first got together, everything about him felt warm and safe. He had this calm confidence, a way of grounding me when life felt overwhelming. We met at an art exhibit, bonded over a shared love for late-night diner coffee, and within a year we were moving in together. Things were good, simple, honest. And then his family entered the picture. Not slowly, not gently, more like a wave crashing through the front door without warning. His mother, Margaret, was the first. She had this polished elegance, the type of woman who always looked put together, even when you caught her off guard. Soft voice, perfect hair, expensive perfume, and an energy I could never quite place. From the beginning, she treated me with a kind of cold politeness. The kind of smile that didn't reach her eyes, the kind of questions that sounded friendly but were meant to evaluate you, measure you, and find what didn't fit. At family dinners, she would say things like, "Oh, Emily, you mean well, I can tell. You try a little too hard sometimes." Or, "I'm sure you'll learn how Daniel likes things eventually. Marriage takes patience." Always with that calm tone, always in front of others, so if I reacted, even slightly, I would instantly look oversensitive. Daniel would laugh it off. He'd say, "That's just how my mom talks. Don't take it personally." But it was personal. Every comment was a needle, a gentle, almost invisible prick, until one day you realize you're covered in them. As months went by, Margaret's visits became more frequent. Sometimes she announced them, most times she didn't. She let herself in with the spare key Daniel insisted she should keep, just in case. At first, I tried to be understanding. Families are complicated. People have habits. I told myself she was simply adjusting to Daniel being married and no longer depending on her. But even in my most generous moments, I couldn't shake the feeling that her eyes followed me with quiet judgment. Still, nothing felt dangerous. Uncomfortable, yes. Intrusive, absolutely. But dangerous? No. That shift came later, slowly, quietly, like a storm you only notice once the first tree has already fallen. The earliest signs were small enough that I ignored them. A misplaced notebook, a drawer left open, a measuring cup moved to a different shelf. Little things I could explain away with distraction or stress or simple forgetfulness. But as the weeks passed, the pattern grew. Objects weren't just moved, they went missing. Items I knew I had touched hours earlier ended up buried somewhere I never used. My phone once appeared inside a cabinet above the fridge, the kind I needed chair to reach. I remember laughing nervously when I found it, telling myself, "Okay, Emily, this one is definitely on you. You're overtired." But the joke didn't land. Inside, something tightened. Something whispered, "You didn't do that. Someone else did." And when I mentioned these things to Daniel, he would tilt his head, concerned but distant, and say, "Stress makes people forgetful. Maybe you just need more rest." He meant well. He always meant well. But meaning well doesn't fix a growing crack. And what made it worse was how effortlessly his family fed that crack. The comments became sharper, though still wrapped in honey. Emily seems overwhelmed lately. Is she managing the house okay? Daniel, darling, maybe she needs some help. Help. That was always their favorite word. And even though Daniel defended me at first, I could see the hesitation building. Tiny pauses before he agreed with me, lingering looks when I misplaced something, sighs that lasted just a little too long. Something was wrong. I could feel it. I just didn't know yet that the storm had already begun and that I was the only one standing in its path. What truly unsettled me was how predictable everything became. Every week, like clockwork, something else went wrong. Something subtle. Something that made me look careless, irresponsible, or forgetful. A burner on the stove left on low. A window unlatched in a rainy night. A bill accidentally thrown away. Laundry mixed with bleach when I swear I never touched that bottle. Each incident was small enough to dismiss on its own, but together they formed a pattern that wrapped around me like a tightening rope. And Daniel noticed the rope too, just not the part where it was tightening. He only saw me struggling against it. One evening, after I scorched a pan I was certain I had turned off, Daniel sighed and rubbed the back of his neck. He didn't yell, he didn't accuse, he did something worse. He looked at me with the quiet, pitying concern of someone who thinks you're slowly losing your grip. You seemed so sad and said, are you sleeping okay? You've been off lately. Off, I repeated. The word stung. I wanted to defend myself, explain that something deeper was happening, that these weren't simple mistakes. But every time I opened my mouth, the words felt fragile. What was I supposed to say? That pan burned itself? That the window unlocked itself in the middle of the night? Even I didn't sound believable in my own head. And Margaret knew it. I could feel it every time she visited. Her inspecting gaze, her casual remarks about housekeeping, her soft touches on Daniel's shoulder as she told him mothers just sense when something is wrong. One afternoon, when Daniel left the room, she leaned toward me with a calm smile and said, "You know, dear, it's perfectly normal to feel overwhelmed. Some women simply aren't built for the pressure. There's no shame in it." I swallowed hard. She wasn't insulting me. She wasn't yelling. She wasn't even raising her voice. She was planting seeds, quiet, poisonous seeds, into the cracks she helped create. And somehow, impossibly, she always arrived on the exact day something strange had happened, like she knew, like she was waiting. There was one incident that pushed me closer to a line I didn't even know I had. I had spent the afternoon working in the living room. When I reached for my laptop charger, it was gone. Completely gone. I searched the whole room, then the whole house. 40 minutes passed before I finally found it shoved behind the washing machine, coiled neatly as if placed there deliberately. I just stood there, staring at it. Cold washed through me. I hadn't been anywhere near the laundry room that day. When I told Daniel, he hesitated before answering. Not with confusion, not with annoyance, with fear. Fear for me, not of what was happening. That was the moment I realized something dangerous. If I kept telling him these things without proof, I was going to lose him. Not because he didn't love me, but because my reality no longer matched his. And still, the pressure kept building. Every day brought something new, something small, something easy to dismiss unless you lived inside the pattern like I did. The worst moment came late one night. I had been asleep for maybe an hour when a thud echoed from the hallway. Not loud, but distinct. The kind of sound a person makes when they try not to be heard. I froze. My heart kicked against my ribs. "Daniel?" I whispered. He slept beside me, unmoving. Another sound followed, a soft rustle, like fabric brushing against the wall. Then the faintest click, as if someone had just closed a door. I eased out of bed, every muscle trembling. The hallway was empty, but something felt wrong. Air displaced, temperature shifted. I checked every room, every closet. Nothing. But when I returned to the bedroom, the jewelry box on my nightstand was open. Wide open. I hadn't touched it in days. The flood of dread that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever felt. This wasn't forgetfulness. This wasn't clumsiness.
This wasn't stress. Someone had been in our home. Someone who moved quietly. Someone who knew exactly what to touch. And the only person besides me and Daniel who had a key was Margaret. Still, I had no proof. No camera footage. No witness. Nothing I could show Daniel except shaking hands and fear he couldn't see. The next morning at breakfast, Margaret called Daniel. And without even hearing her words, I knew that whatever had happened last night, she already knew about it. My breath caught as Daniel ended the call. He didn't look at me harshly. He looked at me with worry. The kind of worry that breaks you. Mom thinks maybe you're dealing with some kind of anxiety or stress you're not talking about. She thinks maybe you should talk to someone. Talk to someone. Therapy, evaluation, assistance. Margaret's plan was working. She wasn't just making me look forgetful, she was making me look unstable. And that was the day something inside me hardened. Something sharp. Something steady. If no one would believe me, I would get the truth myself. Quietly. Carefully. Without warning. The rope that had been tightening around me, I decided to cut it. And finally see who was pulling it. The moment everything snapped wasn't loud. It didn't come from a fight, or a scream, or a dramatic confrontation. It came from something unbelievably small, so small that on any other day I would have ignored it. But when you're living in a house that no longer feels like yours, the smallest shift can become the final weight that breaks the beam holding your sanity together. It happened on a Thursday afternoon. Daniel was working late, and the house felt unusually quiet. Not the ordinary, comfortable kind of quiet, but the still, heavy kind that presses against your skin. The kind of quiet that makes you aware of every sound your body makes. Your heartbeat, your breath, the small crackle of fabric as you move. I walked into the kitchen to make tea. I remember reaching up to one of the higher cabinets, the one where we kept the rarely used dishes. I wasn't even sure why I decided to open it. Maybe I was looking for something different to distract my mind. And that's when I saw it. A single plate, balanced at the very edge of the shelf, tilted forward, positioned with such precision that the slightest vibration, closing a drawer, setting a cup on the counter, would have knocked it off. I just stood there, staring at it. My brain refused to process it. I thought maybe my eyes were playing tricks on me. Maybe I was tired.
Maybe. But no amount of rationalizing could make that plate move itself to the front. I reached up slowly, fingertips brushing the rim. It teetered. My breath caught. And in that instant, a memory rushed back so vividly that I felt my chest clench. The kitchen cabinet that had collapsed on me 2 months earlier. The way Margaret had been in the kitchen shortly before it happened. The strange, almost serene expression on her face afterward. The way she had whispered, "Sometimes things fall apart when we ignore the signs." I felt cold all over. Not fear, recognition. A horrible certainty that wrapped itself around my spine and squeezed. This wasn't a coincidence. This wasn't bad luck. This wasn't me being careless. Someone was setting traps in my home. And the only person who came and went freely was Margaret. Still, I didn't touch the plate. I didn't fix it. Instead, I backed away slowly, my breath shaking, my hands trembling. And as I stepped back into the hallway, I felt something else. Something I couldn't explain. A shift in the air. A whisper of movement. Like someone had just been there. Like someone had just slipped around the corner before I entered the kitchen. I checked every room, every closet, every window, every door. Nothing. Silence. Stillness. But the feeling didn't leave. It followed me for the rest of the day, hovering just behind my shoulder. When Daniel finally came home that night, I tried carefully to tell him what I found. Not the panic, not the fear, just the facts. But the moment I mentioned the plate, he sighed. A long, weary sigh that felt heavier than anything his family had ever said. "Emily, I don't know what's happening, but this is getting out of hand. You're starting to see danger where there isn't any. Maybe you're stressed, maybe you're anxious, but this doesn't sound like you." That sentence hit me harder than I expected. Not because he doubted me. He had doubted me before. Not because he dismissed my fear. He had done that too. but because of the way he said, "This doesn't sound like you." As if the woman standing in front of him wasn't his wife anymore. As if Margaret's narrative, subtle, poisonous, persistent, had finally reached him. I felt something inside me tighten. Something deep. Something ancient. I realized that if I didn't act, if I didn't reclaim the version of myself that was slipping away, then I would become the unstable woman they whispered about. Not because it was true, but because they had spoken it into existence. That night, I lay awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, listening to the house breathe around me. That's when I heard it again. A soft sound, a shift, a faint click from the hallway. My body went rigid, every muscle pulled tight. I glanced at Daniel, sound asleep. Then slowly, barely breathing, I slipped out of bed and moved toward the door. The hallway was empty, but something was wrong. I didn't know what until my foot brushed against something small on the floor. A bobby pin. Black. Shiny. Not mine. Margaret wore them. Every day. Her signature hairstyle, twisted and pinned back. She had been here. Not earlier, not days ago. Tonight. While we slept. I pressed my back against the wall, covering my mouth to keep from gasping. My heart hammered so hard I worried it would wake Daniel. In that moment, everything became clear. The pattern, the missing objects, the rearranged drawers, the window left unlocked, the subtle traps, the whispers about my mental state.
Margaret wasn't just visiting. She was entering our home at night. She was stalking through rooms while we slept. She was creating chaos in places that should have been safe. And I finally understood her real goal. She wanted Daniel to believe I was unstable. She wanted me isolated, doubted, and worn down. She wanted control, and she was patient enough to get it. But she made one mistake. One tiny miscalculation. She left evidence. Not much, just a single bobby pin. But it was enough to ignite something fierce inside me. Fear turned into clarity. Clarity turned into resolve. And resolve turned into a single sharp thought. I'm going to catch you, and I'm going to make sure no one ever questions me again. That was the moment I decided on the hidden cameras. Not out of paranoia, not out of desperation, but out of survival. This was no longer about proving a point. This was about reclaiming the truth of my own life. I bought the cameras the very next morning. Small, discreet, easy to hide, nothing flashy, nothing that would draw the eye. I chose models with silent operation, wide-angle lenses, and night vision. I didn't want to miss anything, not even the smallest shadow moving across the floor. I remember standing in the aisle of the electronics store, my hands trembling slightly. Not from fear, but from certainty. For the first time in months, I felt like I had a grip on something solid, a plan, a direction, a chance to take my life back from the quiet nightmare that had settled over it. When I got home, I placed one camera behind the row of cookbooks on the kitchen counter, another inside the living room bookshelf, nestled between two decorative plants. A third went in the hallway, pointed toward the front door. The placements were deliberate, chosen based on where things had gone missing, where objects had moved, where noises had echoed in the night. I didn't tell Daniel, not because I wanted to keep secrets, but because I no longer trusted the space between us. He was listening to someone else's version of me, someone he thought he knew better, someone who wasn't living inside the reality I was experiencing every day. Once everything was in place, I waited. Hours felt like days. Nights felt like weeks. Every creak in the house made my pulse jump. Every unexpected sound made me hold my breath. I moved differently, quieter, more aware, like someone living with an uninvited guest whose schedule she couldn't predict. 3 days passed before something finally happened. It was a Saturday afternoon. Daniel had just left to run errands. I was in the bedroom, gathering laundry, when I heard the front door open. Slowly, deliberately. My heart slammed into my ribs. I knew Daniel wouldn't return that quickly, and I knew no one else should have been entering our home. I didn't step out of the room. I didn't make a sound. Instead, I reached for my phone,
opened the camera app and tapped into the live feed. The screen loaded, and there she was, Margaret, standing in my kitchen, moving with a calmness that chilled me. She didn't call out Daniel's name. She didn't knock or announce herself. She walked inside as if she owned the place, as if everything in it belonged to her. I watched, frozen, as she examined the countertop, then moved toward the drawers. She opened them one by one, lightly brushing her hands over the utensils, pausing occasionally as if searching for something specific. Her movements were slow, methodical, calculated.
Then she took out a set of keys, my keys, and placed them inside a cereal box. Not buried, not hidden deep, just tucked out of view. Easy to find, but not by me. Not right away. Just enough to make me question myself when I searched and found nothing. She stepped back from the pantry, wiping her hands down her dress as though dusting off a task she'd completed perfectly. My throat tightened. This wasn't sabotage for chaos's sake. This was a performance, a script, a long game meant to make me unravel. Then Margaret did something I hadn't expected. She reached into her purse and pulled out a single piece of paper, a grocery list. My grocery list, the one I had written that morning, the one I left on the kitchen counter. She studied it for a moment, lips curling in amusement. Then she crumpled it, slowly, intentionally, and threw it behind the stove. I covered my mouth, breath shaking. This wasn't clumsiness. It wasn't helping. It was psychological warfare. She moved deeper into the kitchen, and that's when the camera caught something I will never forget, something that still makes my stomach twist when I think about it. Margaret opened the cabinet above the stove, the high one, the one I never touched. She withdrew a ceramic plate and held it in both hands as if weighing it. Her eyes didn't hold anger. They held calculation, focus, purpose. She placed the plate on the very edge of the shelf, exactly like the one I found days before. She adjusted it twice, each adjustment more perfect than the last. Then she stepped back, admiring her work as though arranging a piece of art. My chest tightened. My vision blurred. It was all real. Every fear, every suspicion, every moment I doubted myself. She had been doing this for months. And then, as if the universe wanted to rip away the last shred of hope I had, the camera cut something even darker. Margaret leaned close to the cabinet door, so close her lips nearly brushed the wood, and she whispered, "She'll break soon. People like her always do." My knees nearly gave out. The room spun. I sank onto the edge of the bed, gripping the phone like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. But the footage wasn't done, not even close. Margaret walked down the hallway, out of range of the kitchen camera, and stepped directly into the view of the hallway camera. My breath hitched. Daniel's office door was slightly open. She looked at it, smiled faintly, and pushed it wider. She entered without hesitation, rummaging through his desk drawers, flipping through his notes, even taking a photo of something inside a folder.
Then she moved to the bedside table in our room, the one where I kept my journal. I watched as she opened it, read it, smirked, then tore out a page, a deeply personal page, folded it, and slid it into her purse. I didn't know whether to cry or scream. That violation, that trespass, that cold, methodical invasion of the most intimate parts of my life, it cracked something inside me that I will never fully repair. And finally, as if she hadn't already gone too far, she stood in the middle of the room and whispered, "Daniel will thank me for this one day." Then she walked out of the house, calm, unhurried, like she had accomplished exactly what she came for. The footage ended, but the impact didn't. It stayed with me. It sat inside my chest like a stone. Because this wasn't just proof. This wasn't just evidence of manipulation. It was evidence of intent, of malice, of someone who looked at me not as family, not even as an obstacle, but as a threat she needed to eliminate quietly.
For the first time, I understood. She wasn't trying to ruin my marriage. She was trying to erase me from it, piece by piece, until the day Daniel woke up and didn't recognize the woman he loved. And that realization didn't just frighten me, it changed me. Now I wasn't just trying to prove my sanity, I was preparing for war. I didn't sleep that night, not even for a minute. I lay in bed with my eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling as the footage replayed in my mind. Every movement, every whisper, every calculated act of sabotage. Each scene felt sharper than the last, as if the truth had suddenly acquired edges. Next to me, Daniel slept peacefully, unaware that the foundation of our marriage had been cracked open, unaware that his mother had been inside our home, inside our bedroom, inside our private lives in ways he never could have imagined. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, standing in the hallway, reading my journal, whispering to herself, setting traps like she was arranging furniture. By morning, something inside me had solidified. I wasn't shaking anymore. I wasn't scared. I wasn't confused. I was ready. Ready for the part of this story that couldn't be delayed anymore.
When Daniel woke, I watched him sit up and stretch, blissfully unaware of the storm about to break. He smiled at me, still half asleep, and leaned in for a kiss, but I pulled back, not out of anger, but out of something deeper. Distance. A quiet distance created by months of doubt, seated by his own mother. "Em?" he asked softly. "You okay?" I didn't answer. Instead, I stood, retrieved my laptop from the dresser, and set it on the bed. Daniel blinked, confused. "Is something wrong?" I opened the folder titled Home Logs. I clicked the first video, and I turned the screen toward him. The room fell silent. At first, his expression was blank, just sleepy confusion. Then confusion sharpened into disbelief. Then disbelief slipped into something darker, something heavier. When he saw his mother enter the house uninvited, his breath caught. When she opened our drawers and touched our belongings, his jaw tightened. When she moved through our home with that eerie calm, his shoulders stiffened. But when she placed the plate on the cabinet ledge, when she positioned it with precision, when she whispered that chilling line, Daniel's hand flew to his mouth. "Wait, no, that's not..." His voice cracked. "Emily, what is this?" "Keep watching," I said, my voice low, steady. He did. And as Margaret walked into our bedroom, opened my journal, read my private thoughts, ripped out a page and slipped it into her purse, something inside Daniel broke. I saw it happen. I saw the exact moment the illusion shattered. His face didn't twist in anger. It didn't redden or contort. Instead, all the color drained from it. His eyes clouded. He deflated, like a man learning gravity had changed overnight. He watched the entire 23-minute recording. Not once did he look at me. Not once did he pause or speak or breathe fully. When the video finally ended, the silence that followed was suffocating. Daniel closed the laptop slowly, like he was afraid it might explode. He stared at the closed lid for so long that I wondered if he had heard anything at all, or if he was locked in some mental space he didn't know how to escape. Finally, he whispered, I don't know who that is." His voice cracked in the middle of the sentence. "That's not my mom." I swallowed hard. "Yes, it is." He shook his head, tiny, panicked movements. "She wouldn't hurt you like that. She wouldn't." His breathing grew uneven. "But she did." For the first time, he met my eyes, and I saw terror in his expression, not fear of me, but fear that his mother truly was. Fear that he had let this happen. Fear that he had chosen the wrong side without even realizing there were sides. "Emily," he said, voice trembling, "why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I did, but you couldn't hear me." Daniel dropped his head into his hands. "I'm so sorry. God, I'm so sorry." His apology felt heavy, sincere, but it didn't erase anything. It didn't undo the months of gaslighting. It didn't erase the nights I felt like I was losing my mind. Still, I knew what needed to happen next. We had to confront her. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Daniel resisted at first, his voice shaking as he said, "She's still my mother. I don't know how to do this." But then he looked at me.
really looked. And he saw the damage, the exhaustion, the fracture lines in a person who had been pushed far past her breaking point.
He nodded. Okay, he whispered. We'll do it together. The drive to Margaret's house was silent, not tense, just hollow, like all the oxygen had been drained from the world. When she opened the door, her smile was instant, polished, warm, the same smile she had used to fool everyone for years. But Daniel didn't return it. He pushed past her into the living room. I followed. Daniel? She asked lightly. What's wrong, sweetheart? He didn't answer. He opened my laptop, pressed play, turned the screen toward her. For the first time since I had known her, Margaret's smile faded. Not slowly, not gracefully. It dropped off her face like a mask slipping from its hook. She didn't gasp or defy anything immediately. Instead, she watched, calmly, coldly, as though evaluating how much we knew, how much we suspected, how much damage control she needed to prepare for. Halfway through the video, she shut the laptop herself. That's enough, she said. Daniel's voice shook as he responded. What did you do? Why would you do this to Emily? To us? Her answer was so chillingly simple that the air left my lungs. I did what needed to be done. Daniel stepped back, horrified. Needed to be done? You sabotaged our home. You tried to make her look insane. I protected you, Margaret snapped, her calm cracking into something sharp. I saw what she was doing to you. I saw how she was changing you. I wasn't going to let her take you away from your family. A cold shiver ran up my spine. The logic in her voice, twisted, righteous, unwavering, revealed everything. This wasn't jealousy. This wasn't meddling. This was possession. In her mind, Daniel wasn't a son. He was property.
Daniel shook his head, disgusted. You need help, Mom. Real help. Margaret's eyes narrowed. No, I need you to wake up. And then she glanced at me. A stare so venomous, so stripped of pretense that all her masks fell away at once. You don't belong here, she whispered. But for the first time, Daniel didn't stand between us. He stood in front of me. Don't ever come near us again, he said. It was the first boundary he had ever set with her, and it broke something deep inside her. She stepped back slowly. Her expression didn't twist into rage or sorrow. It settled into something far more terrifying. Certainty. Pure, unshakable certainty that she was the victim. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Then she closed the door. It was over. But it wasn't finished. The drive home after confronting Margaret didn't feel like a victory. It didn't feel like closure. It didn't even feel like relief. It felt empty. Quiet. Like the air around us had thickened and neither of us knew how to breathe it in anymore. Daniel kept both hands on the steering wheel the entire ride, gripping it so tightly his knuckles had turned pale. He didn't speak. He didn't look at me. He stared straight ahead as if the road itself might collapse if he shifted his attention even for a moment. For the first time since installing the cameras, I felt something unexpected. Grief. Not for Margaret, not for the illusions that had fallen apart, but for Daniel, for the brokenness sitting across from me, for the truth he had just been forced to swallow, for the way his world had been ripped open by the woman he trusted most. When we got home, he walked inside slowly, like someone entering a crime scene. His eyes scanned every part of the house, the walls, the furniture, the hallway, like he was seeing it all for the first time, like he finally understood what it had become for me, a battlefield disguised as a home. He sat on the edge of the couch and leaned forward, elbows on his knees, hands clasped together. I could tell he was searching for words, but none were coming. I said something finally. My voice didn't sound like mine. It sounded tired, thin, used. Daniel swallowed hard. I don't know where to begin. I sat next to him, not touching him. There was a distance between us that needed to be respected now, a space created by the months of doubt, the gaslighting, the quiet unraveling he didn't see. He said, I should have believed you. I should have listened.
I let her convince me that you were the problem. His voice cracked, and he covered his face with his hands. I didn't move. I didn't comfort him. Not out of cruelty, but because the pain between us was both of ours now, and neither of us knew how to reach across it yet. After a long silence, he said something that surprised me. I'm scared of her now. I turned to look at him. He wasn't exaggerating. His eyes were raw, wide, and unsettled. He whispered, I always knew she could be controlling, but that, the planning, the sneaking into our home, the traps, Emily, that wasn't my mother. At least not the one I thought she was.
He exhaled sharply, like trying to force out a poison lodged in his chest. She'll come back, he said quietly. She won't accept this. He wasn't wrong. I felt it too. The certainty in her eyes, the promise behind her final words, the way she stared at me like I was something she intended to erase. But despite the dread, there was something else in me now. Something I hadn't felt in months. Strength. Not the loud, dramatic kind. Something calmer. Grounded. Strong in the quiet way that comes from surviving something designed to break you. She won't come near me again, I said softly. And if she tries, she won't get away with it this time. The next few weeks were strange. Not peaceful, but quieter. Daniel changed. He walked more slowly, spoke more carefully, listened more intently. He stayed close to me. Not out of fear, but out of a desperate desire to rebuild something he realized he had nearly destroyed by accident. We installed new locks. We changed security codes. We set boundaries. Real ones this time. Margaret didn't contact us. Not once. Not an apology, not an explanation, not even another veiled threat. But silence from a person like her wasn't comfort. It was a warning. There were days I felt watched. Not literally. Just a pressure in the air. A sense that someone somewhere was thinking about me with too much intention.
I started therapy, not because I was unstable, but because healing takes work. And I needed to understand the version of myself that had survived those weeks with no proof, no allies, no clarity. I learned something important in those sessions. Gaslighting doesn't destroy you all at once. It dissolves you slowly, quietly, until you're no longer sure which version of yourself is real. And once you've lived in that place, you never forget it. Daniel went to therapy too, separately. He needed to unravel the manipulation he didn't recognize, the guilt, the shame, the part of him that still wanted to believe the woman who raised him couldn't possibly do the things she did. We didn't rush healing. We didn't pretend the confrontation fixed everything. We learned to sit with discomfort, to recognize old patterns before they resurfaced, to rebuild trust one slow moment at a time. Some nights I still wake up and listen for sounds in the hallway. My heart races until I remember, we changed the locks. We installed cameras. We reclaimed this house. And some nights Daniel wakes up and checks the footage, not because he needs to, but because he can't fully shake the fear of what his mother might do next. Healing isn't neat. It isn't linear. It doesn't come with a clean ending. But I am not the woman Margaret tried to break. I am not the fragile figure she wanted Daniel to see. I am not the version of myself she carefully crafted through sabotage and whispers. I survived her. I exposed her. And I reclaimed the truth. Sometimes when the house is quiet, I hear the echo of her final words. You'll regret this.
But I don't. Not anymore. Because regret belongs to people who look back and wish they had done less. I look back and know I should have acted sooner. I should have trusted myself sooner. I should have recognized that the person trying to make me feel insane was the one who had lost her grip on reality long before I stepped into her family. And if there is one thing I want anyone listening to understand, it's this. When someone tries to convince you that your reality is a lie, pay attention. That person is telling you exactly who they are. I learned that the hard way, but I learned it, and that's why I'm still standing.